Hi, everyone. Welcome to another guest lecture at Hospitality Academy. Our topic today is menu engineering strategies for profitability by integrating plant-based options. I am Kate from Hospitality Academy, and I'm happy to announce and honor that today we have Meredith from CEO of Vegan Hospitality. So please, Meredith, feel free to introduce yourself and your topic, and let's start.
Thank you for that introduction. Hi, everyone. Thank you for being here. It's good to see some friendly faces or friendly names since everyone has their camera off. But I will scroll through and see if I can see some faces. You're welcome to turn your camera on so I can see your reactions. So I am Meredith Marin. I am the CEO of Vegan Hospitality. I live in the beautiful Caribbean island of Aruba, although our network of vegan hospitality consultants spans 25 countries. And we help restaurants profitably integrate plant-based options into their menu, hence why I'm talking about this. But we do more than that. We also do staff training. We have a certification program for hotels that welcome vegan guests. And our goals are to make the vegan lifestyle accessible and acceptable worldwide. And that really makes it important to impact the hospitality industry, because one of the biggest known barriers for people staying vegan is dining. Dining options are just not there when it comes to plant-based options or living a vegan lifestyle. So today we are going to talk about how to integrate these options profitably, because of course, businesses have to make money, and that is one of the biggest obstacles for chefs, restaurant managers not wanting to put vegan options on their menu. It's because they think they're not going to sell well, and sometimes they're right. So what we want to do is make sure if we are putting these options on the menu, we are doing it correctly. We're doing it in a way that sets ourselves up for success. So thank you to the Hospitality Academy for inviting me to speak today. And thank you to each of you who is taking time out of your day to be here with me. Let's get started. I think it's important to first just define what the word plant-based means, or the words plant-based means. So you might hear people saying they're on a plant-based diet, or they want to integrate more plant-based food into their life. And sometimes people mean different things when they say this. Now, this is for a number of reasons. It's because in different countries, words mean different things. It is also because there's no standardization in the industry. And so when something is labeled plant-based on a menu or maybe in a supermarket, it could mean different things. And people generally also just utilize this term because they believe their diet is mainly based on plants. But when we are trying to standardize things in hospitality, we need to have a standard definition. And so I'm going to define for you what I mean when I say plant-based, and what I mean when I say it's important to integrate plant-based dishes into your menu. So number one, we should be talking about a dish that is made entirely out of plants. So if we're calling something on a menu plant-based, it's not just based in plants. Everything should be plants. So that is including fruits, vegetables, legumes, grains, plant-based meat products, plant-based dairy products, and even plant-based sweeteners. But there's a catch, because mushrooms. What do we do about that? Have you ever seen a fungi label on a menu? Probably not. So it's a little confusing, I understand, but fungi-based dishes are also often referred to as plant-based when you're seeing them on menus. So we'll just have to ignore that fact because it doesn't really fit with our plant-based definition, but we're going to go with it for today. The plant-based dishes also need to be completely vegan friendly. So if we're using this kind of pure definition of plant-based, meaning it's entirely made out of plants, of course it should be vegan friendly. But if you look around at menus in your community, or if you work at a restaurant, or you've seen a menu maybe at a restaurant where you work, you might have noticed that not all dishes that are called plant-based are actually appropriate for a vegan guest, because vegan guests will abstain from eating any kind of animal product. So that not only includes the whole product, like milk, but actually any derivative of that might be integrated into an ingredient. So for example, you might see a plant-based burger patty being advertised as plant-based, but when you ask, well, tell me about the bun, or what are the condiments on that burger patty, it turns out that it's a plant-based patty on a non-vegan or non-plant-based bun with egg-based mayonnaise. So these are things we really need to consider if we're going to integrate plant-based dishes onto our menu. We need every component of that dish, every ingredient in that dish, to be fully plant-based. Now, number three is a bonus. But if you want the dish to stay on your menu, it has to have this. It has to have desirability, has to be satisfying, it has to be tasty. Desirable, as far as plant-based options, they really need to be familiar to people. So if they have a lot of tricky words that no one understands and the servers can't explain what these ingredients are, and the flavor profile is just totally different from anything else on your menu, it's not going to be very desirable for someone to order that particular dish. We want the plant-based dishes to fit the theme of your menu. So if you have a Japanese restaurant, you're probably not going to serve a marinara pasta as your plant-based option. But we do see this happening in the industry, and it's very strange. So what we want to do is think, what is the theme of my restaurant, and how do I make this plant-based dish just as desirable, if not more desirable, than the meat-based alternatives? And we're going to get into that today on what are some of those strategies. But you may want to consider nutritional satisfaction. So I'm not saying you have to be a nutritionist and you have to analyze this entire profile for macro and micronutrients of the dish, but what we do need to think about is simply, how do I want my customer to feel after they've eaten this dish? Do I want them to leave feeling hungry? Probably not. But do many people who order plant-based dishes leave feeling hungry? Yeah, they do. And that's number one, because of portion size. So many chefs don't realize that plant-based ingredients are just naturally lower calorie than the meat-based alternatives on average, and sometimes lower in fat as well. So what that means is we need sometimes bigger portion sizes for the plant-based dishes. And we also need to consider, do we have fats? Do we have proteins in this dish as well? And how can we blend all these ingredients to make it satisfying? Not just nutritionally, also textures. So we want to have a crunch, or we want to have the different textures. We want it to feel just physically satisfying when we're eating that dish. So we need to consider all of this. A lot of thought goes into planning plant-based dishes, as it should, just like any other kind of dish. But oftentimes you see menus where it's very obvious that not a lot of thought went into planning those dishes, and the dish was just an afterthought, which we can't expect that to sell very well. And another thing you might want to consider is, does this dish appeal to a broad audience? So not just to that one person who is living a vegan lifestyle and has to order that dish because there's nothing else on the menu for them, but would someone who maybe hasn't been living a vegan lifestyle be interested in just trying that dish because it actually looks appealing to them? Now, if any of you have thoughts during this lecture, please feel free to comment in the chat. I'd love to hear from you if you have questions. We will have time at the end, but you're welcome to throw things into the chat as you think of them, because I'd love to have this be a conversation. And if I say something that resonates, like you've seen this before in your community or in your travels, I'd love to hear that story as well. And I'm sure everyone else who's here would love to hear that story, because I think we can all relate. We are going to talk about plant-based opportunities and also the challenges. We can't look through rose-colored glasses. We need to be real about this. There are challenges with putting plant-based dishes onto our menus, but first let's focus on why this is such an opportunity. So if you right now work at a restaurant, there's nothing plant-based, or there's very little plant-based, you are faced with this huge opportunity to do so many great things for your business, and I can't wait to tell you about them. So number one, plant-based dishes might be counterintuitive, but actually they are the most inclusive dishes you can put on your menu. So think about it. Who can eat plant-based dishes? Everyone, pretty much, unless you have some rare fruit allergy, right? So because of that, it means you've just opened up a dish on your menu that almost all of your customers can order. And plant-based dishes are very good at avoiding some of the top allergens. So for example, milk, top allergens, seafood, top allergens. Those are going to be avoided by creating a fully plant-based dish. So you've got this inclusive dish that, if it is appealing enough, everyone can order it. And that is something that just is very hard to do with any other kind of dish, because there are ingredients, for example, even in vegetarian dishes, there are ingredients that vegans won't eat. So even a vegetarian dish is really not as inclusive as a fully plant-based, vegan-friendly dish. Health promoting. Plant-based dishes are often the most health promoting, meaning that people are going to leave feeling really good. Now, obviously, if we fry everything on the menu, it's not going to be the healthiest dish, but fried cauliflower is probably going to be healthier than fried bacon. So the plant-based dishes have this opportunity to be more health promoting. Also, they are the most sustainable, and we are going to talk about this. I have a whole one slide dedicated to sustainability. Of course, you could do a whole lecture on it, but I'm going to share with you in one slide, just so you can get the premise to understand why plant-based options are so sustainable and we're going to talk about emissions, greenhouse gas emissions, and why that's important to consider, especially if sustainability is a motivation for you in your business. Plant-based dishes, of course, you can see from this slide, they are visually appealing. They have a colorful aesthetic, unless you're serving only brown, only green dishes. But let's get creative here. Let's look at all the beautiful, vibrant colors we have. And if you think about any plate of meat, let's say a bland-looking chicken, for example, we naturally infuse plants into that plate in order to make it colorful. So you'll see chefs putting drizzles and beet puree with it, and twigs of rosemary, and you're going to see plants being used to season and to brighten up that meat-based dish. So of course we're going to get even more colorful if we are only using plants in our dish. Plant-based dishes can also have higher profit margins. Now, this is going to be when you're using the whole food plant-based ingredients. So I'm not talking about processed products or specialty products. I'm talking about foods like lentils or chickpeas, where we can make some really awesome ingredients, awesome dishes from these ingredients that are so low in cost to produce. I make lentil nuggets for my children from red lentils and an onion and water and some spices, and they love it. Have I ever seen that on a kid's menu? No. Kids' menus often forget about the vegans altogether. My kids eat fries when we go out to eat most of the time, and I feed them when we get home. So we want to think about how can we have higher profit margins by focusing on ingredients that are simply just naturally lower cost to purchase for our restaurant. And you might have some of those ingredients in your kitchen already. You're using them as side dishes, but you're not capitalizing on using them as the centerpiece in the dish. And finally, plant-based dishes are the easiest to adapt with add-ons versus removing ingredients. I'm going to talk more in detail about this strategy, but the gist of it is that if you have the base of your dish, or the base of even some components of your dish being plant-based, it's a lot easier to add ingredients to that dish than to try to remove ingredients from that dish. It's not only easier for the kitchen, it's easier for the servers because they don't have to worry about some miscommunication where all of a sudden they're bringing a dish and then they have to take it back because the cheese wasn't removed. But it's easier for the customers, and it's just better for customer psychology, for people to be excited and happy to dine at your restaurant. So we hear this idea, okay, vegans only eat salads. But when you look at salad menus in your community, you're going to find most salads aren't vegan. Most salads have cheese on them, have dairy-based dressings. Some of them have meat on them. Some of them have anchovies in the dressing, for example. So a lot of times vegans can't even eat the salad. Sounds crazy, right? So what we want to do is look at things like salads. How can we make this salad, just the base of it, vegan friendly, the dressing vegan friendly? And then if people want to add meat onto it or cheese onto it, then they can choose or opt into it. So the customer psychology of removing something from your dish and paying the same price for it, of course, that doesn't make someone feel very good. It makes them feel taken advantage of. But if we are paying for something premium because we are special and we want to have our extra stuff on our food, and then you get what you asked for and you pay for it, it's just much better for the consumer. It's better for everyone. So we see more and more menus moving into this model. Let's talk about this concept called the veto vote. This is really important to understand if you work for a restaurant and you are not currently serving vegan guests. Put in the chat if you've ever heard of this term, the veto vote. I'd love to know. I know some of you probably have heard of it before. So the veto vote is this phenomenon that when there is a vegan in a group, so this group, whether it's family or friends, they are going out to eat, the vegan person ends up choosing where the entire group eats. Think about this in your own life. Do you have a person in your friends group or family group that has dietary restrictions or is a picky eater of some sort? Or I see Alex saying, yep, that's me. So maybe it's you or maybe it's someone else in your family or your friend group, you have to defer to them to say, can you eat at this place? I mean, if you're a good friend, I guess some people aren't, but let's assume you're a good friend and you want to care about your friend and make sure that they're not sitting there just, staring at you while you're eating. Then you want to make sure that they can eat. And oftentimes that friend knows better than anyone else where they can get a good meal. So the vegan person ends up choosing where the entire group eats. And what that means is if your restaurant isn't offering a vegan-friendly experience or a plant-based experience, then you're missing the opportunity, not just of that vegan customer, but of the entire group. And this can be a big deal when we think about this financially. What does this mean? What is the financial impact on your business if you are turning customers away? If you're turning vegan customers away, if you're turning entire groups away, and sometimes you may not even know this is happening. So it could be that no one's calling you because you have nothing on your menu. So you might think, well, no one's ever asked me for a vegan meal, but that's because they didn't even bother to call because they know that there's a place down the street where they can eat and they don't want to spend time trying to explain to you what to cook for them. So what you can do is look at how many empty seats are in your restaurant on average every day. And if you have a full restaurant, that's great. Then finances is not going to be your motivation for integrating plant-based options. I'll give you other motivations in a minute, but let's just assume that you have some empty seats. So let's take a look at that and ask ourselves, how much money could I be losing by turning away vegan guests and potentially other people in their party? Simple calculation. If you have, let's say, 10 empty seats per day and your average customer spends $30, let's say, then across the week, you're missing out on over $2,000. Across the month, that's of course over $8,000. And if we look at a whole year, that's over $100,000 that you're missing out on by turning away guests. And so it turns out that turning away these guests who want plant-based dishes is actually a very expensive problem to have. Now, if you need another motivation to add plant-based options to your menu, we want to look at greenhouse gas emissions. So many restaurants have already moved away from plastic straws. We know plastic straws aren't good for the earth, but have we looked at our menus and what we can do? Because reducing greenhouse gas emissions is actually a more urgent problem than plastic straws, and it's actually a more high impact solution that we can do by adjusting our menus. So if you take a look at some of these common ingredients, we can call them, we have beef, and there's a designation between beef from a beef herd and beef from a dairy herd. So there are different kinds of farms. So we can have farms where the cows are being raised to be slaughtered for beef, and we have farms where the cows are first being raised to produce dairy milk or turn into cheese or whatever you're eating from cow's milk. But then at this point, they will also turn into beef. So those cows eventually get slaughtered too. And the reason that these reflect higher emissions. So we're looking at carbon emissions right now, or carbon emission equivalent. So if the reason they reflect different is because you're just cutting in half the amount of emissions from the dairy herd, you're splitting it between the beef industry and the dairy industry. So it's the same emissions, but it's being split between the industries. So if we look at beef, we see that it has a significantly higher carbon emission than anything else, and methane also, which is a carbon equivalent. It's even worse in some ways. And of course, cheese is going to follow because cheese comes from cows, just like beef, and then dairy, and then we have everything else. But what we can see at the bottom is we have bananas, which have a very, very small environmental footprint, and that is reflective of most plant-based ingredients. So the plant-based ingredients on your menu are always going to have the lowest carbon footprint of anything else. And that doesn't matter where you get it from. So we have this idea that if we are buying local and our food was not transported a very far distance to get to our plate, then actually we're doing a great thing and we're reducing our emissions. And while that is, I mean, I think buying local is very good, right? And it's also sustainable in the sense that you're sustaining your local economy and you're helping the local people, and all that is good. There's nothing wrong with buying local. It should be celebrated. However, buying local beef is still going to have a higher carbon footprint than buying a foreign banana or potato or even an avocado. So we have to just be really honest about that. If our motivation is sustainability, is reducing carbon emissions, then if we're just posting everywhere, we have local food, that could be considered what we call greenwashing, which is when we are obsessed with showcasing how green or sustainable we are, but not actually putting into practice some of the steps that would be the most impactful as far as our environmental footprint. So this is one motivation you might have for integrating plant-based options. This is one opportunity to reduce the carbon footprint of your business. And of course, if you are integrating plant-based options and they're not selling well, then you have not decreased your carbon footprint, because people actually have to buy those dishes instead of the higher, less sustainable, carbon dishes. They have to make a swap. So if you're just adding plant-based dishes, it doesn't actually reduce your emissions. You have to actually entice people to buy those dishes. And another thing you can do if you're really committed to this is you can simply remove dishes with beef from your menu, because beef is really the highest offender. You can also reduce portion sizes of beef within the dish. So if you have a dish with a lot of different components, maybe you want to start blending it. Like if you have a beef stew, maybe cut the beef in half and add chickpeas to supplement. So start to think about how you can do this on your menu. I think I hear some people with some that need to be muted. So anybody who has sound, just mute yourself, unless you have something really good to say. I'd love to hear it because I love engagement. All right. So you can see the transport is in pink, and there's very little transport. There's very little pink anywhere here except for the bananas. It's the only place where it's visible. The biggest issues with sustainability are in land use change, when they have to actually cut down forests to grow soybeans, for example, to feed these cows, or in the actual farming of the animals. And 99% of these animals are farmed on factory farms. So it's not those tiny little cute farms that you imagine in your head from all this marketing. It's actually quite scary. And I do encourage you to look these things up if you haven't ever looked into where your food comes from. So let's get into something a little more difficult. Let's keep going into the difficult stuff. Why might plant-based options be a challenge for chefs? And what are the obstacles that restaurants are facing as far as putting these dishes on their menu and selling them successfully? Well, we know from research and from probably looking around and talking to people that mainstream customers are afraid that plant-based dishes won't taste good. That's the reality. People don't want to try plant-based dishes because they're scared of them. People are afraid. Now, it doesn't look that scary. Beans don't look that scary, right? But what is scary is spending our money on something that we are not satisfied with, because we all are strapped for cash. We don't want to go out and spend $30 on some bean burger we never heard of and hope it's good. We want to make sure if we're buying a plant-based dish that it's delicious. So we have to understand that people are only going to purchase these dishes if they're familiar and if they're delicious, and if they believe it's for them. So if we are writing the word vegan everywhere and we are calling it a vegan everything, vegan taco with vegan meat and vegan sauce, and what's happening is that anyone who's not vegan is saying, well, I'm not vegan. Why should I try that? Or maybe they're thinking, well, I tried that vegan taco 10 years ago and that was gross. I would never try that again. And so what people don't really know is that vegan food or plant-based ingredients have really come a long way. And every year it improves, actually. It's so technologically advanced now, and culinary skill is so advanced now that you can get incredible vegan food where it would be much better than the meat-based alternative. And you maybe wouldn't even know what you were eating. You wouldn't even know maybe that you weren't eating meat. So we do have to overcome this fear in the way that we write our menus. And I'm going to teach you in a few moments some menu writing strategies to overcome this. Now, culinary skill, training, and creativity is often needed. So we can take a chicken and we can put it on a grill, and it's a pretty straightforward process. But to make something that looks and feels and tastes like meat that's not made from meat is hard. Or to integrate all these different flavors and colors and use multiple plants in your dish, it takes a little bit more skill. And one of the problems that we see in the industry is that even the most experienced chefs, they went to culinary school at a time when plants were never the center of the dish. Plants were always a side dish or a garnish even. And I remember the moment when I went vegan many years ago, and my grandfather was in the food industry, and I was eating a kale salad, and he just gave me the strangest look. And he was like, kale is a garnish. Why would you eat that? How could that possibly be a meal? It blew his mind. And when we think about the experiences of people with food, if they've never had the chance to see or cook with plants as the center of the plate, they're probably going to need some practice and time and research to do that profitably, to do it well and successfully. And chefs are pretty busy. They're overworked. They don't have a lot of time to go and do all this research around plant-based ingredients and how to cook them in a way that everyone's going to accept. And that's why I have a job, because people need consultants. And that's why I train consultants around the world to do this work, because we really are very skilled at this. And sometimes support is necessary. Another challenge is that processed alternative meats and cheeses can be more expensive for menus. So, for example, you might have heard of Beyond Meat or Impossible Foods, or any sort of plant-based dairy, plant-based cheeses. Those are specialty products, we can call them, and they do tend to be more expensive for a number of reasons. They're not subsidized by the government, and they are usually owned by smaller companies. So they're more expensive, and chefs tend to fall on these products because chefs, like I just shared, they don't have the expertise necessarily to be creating these dishes from scratch. They also don't necessarily have the time to do that. And they don't necessarily have the time to train all the cooks in the kitchen how to prep these intricate plant-based dishes. So it's much easier for them to go and choose an alternative meat product that is processed, but it's not very profitable for their menu. So these are problems. These are problems that we need to start figuring out how to solve. And these are barriers that we can overcome them. They are fixable. So let's get into some effective strategies for making these dishes profitable on your menu. So this first one I already touched on a little bit, making your dishes plant-based by default. If we can take a look at our menus, we can look through every dish and think, which dish or even which components of this dish can I make plant-based? And we want to do that without compromising on the flavor of the dish. So there are dishes, like I said, salads, which people would assume are going to be plant-based anyway. So you can't go wrong by making all your salads vegan and then having anything else as an add-on. And you can have animal-based add-ons and you can have plant-based add-ons like tofu, chickpeas. Now, if you are having add-ons that are plant-based, please make them taste good. Please season them the same way you would season a shrimp or a chicken. Are you going to put a bland boiled chicken as an add-on for a salad? Probably not. You're going to grill it with some balsamic vinegar and make it taste really delicious and juicy. So do the same thing with the tofu. And a lot of the methods you already use to cook your chicken can be used for the tofu. And then there's about 1,000 other ways to cook tofu that you'll find if you start Googling it. And you'll get very overwhelmed because you can freeze it and you can fry it and you can crumble it up, but it's really fun if you have time to experiment with that. So think about the flavors. Chickpeas, don't just pull them out of a can and put them on the salad. I once went to a restaurant a couple weeks ago where they literally took the chickpeas out of the can and they didn't drain it or wash it. It was like, oh, the chickpea liquid on my burrito bowl. And I was getting on an airplane and it was the only thing in the airport. So I ate it anyway, but it was one of the worst meals I ever had. So please do your research on these plant-based toppings if you're going to add them to your menu, or hire a consultant to help you with that. If you're not sure where to start and you're not ready to make your entire menu plant-based by default or your main dishes, then I recommend you look at the 5 S's. And we can say that we can veganize the 5 S's. Veganize is another word for saying we're going to make it plant-based. It's a more fun word to use. So try it and see what people say or how they look at you when you say, I'm going to veganize the 5 S's. So the 5 S's are sauces, salads, soups, sides, and sweets. If we look at our sauces, we don't have to veganize everything, but there must be some of your signature sauces you can make vegan. And sometimes it's as simple as swapping the chicken broth for a vegetable broth. I've seen restaurants that make their vegetable soup with chicken broth, and that is such a missed opportunity because then the vegetarians and vegans aren't ordering it. And who else is going to order the vegetable soup the most often? So really think, how can I make these sauces more vegan friendly? Maybe you have a butter in a sauce that can be swapped for a plant-based butter or for an oil. Maybe you have such a tiny amount of milk powder in something that it doesn't even need to be there. Sometimes we see muffins being made with eggs that don't need the eggs. And then you're taking out the eggs, so you're saving money and you don't even need to replace it with anything. Just add a little more baking powder to make it rise more, but you don't need to necessarily replace some of these ingredients with anything. And so you're saving money actually by veganizing these items. I already spoke about salads, soups, sides. Are you offering vegetable sides that are not vegan friendly? Missed opportunity. So do you have your steamed broccoli covered in butter on top? Or do you have, what have I seen? Bacon on your Brussels sprouts. Why? We don't need to do that. That's like the most disappointing thing for vegans. They're like, yes, Brussels sprouts. Oh, bacon. So don't do that. Just put the bacon on the side as an optional add-on. You'll make more money. I'll charge $2 for it. The people have to add it on to the Brussels sprouts. What about sweets? Every vegan knows that we sit there watching everyone eat the chocolate cake while we are being served a fruit platter. Don't be that restaurant that puts a vegan through that. We love fruit. We usually eat it for breakfast. We don't need to eat it for dessert. We eat fruit all the time throughout our day. We're drinking smoothies as we run to the gym. We're super healthy. So we don't, that was a stereotype, but we don't need fruit for dessert when we're going out for a decadent meal. So please consider the sweets and consider making some of your desserts just naturally vegan friendly so that everyone can eat them. So you can make anything vegan. You can make cheesecake vegan. You can make vegan creme brulee. You can make a vegan brownie. Some of the best vegan desserts I've had are the ones that aren't even intentionally made to be vegan. They just happen to be because it's a naturally plant-based recipe. So these are things you really can start to think about. And this is where the thought comes in. This is a creative process. And if you are a chef, think back to why you became a chef in the first place. I bet you enjoy that creative process. I certainly do. And it can be very exciting to think, how can I re-envision this dish without the animal products? And how can I get it to taste just as good, if not even better? There's a bakery near me where I was speaking to the owner, and he said he's actually transitioning all of his pastries to be plant-based. And I asked, why? That's all of them? Okay, great. Why? He said, because it just tastes better. The plant-based butter that I'm using just tastes better. It makes my pastries taste better. So if you haven't experimented with this, it's a missed opportunity. So give it a try and find ways to integrate this where you're not compromising on flavor, and then you're not going to get complaints from traditional customers because they won't even know that anything is different. They're not going to say, oh, that's a vegan dish. They're going to say that's a delicious dessert. And that's all they have to know. Finally, this is more of a newer strategy that I'm seeing on menus. So you can make the vegan version of a popular dish the only option. So here's an example. Let's say you have only one taco on your menu. That taco can be a peanut tofu taco or a crumbled Beyond Meat chorizo taco. So if someone comes and they're craving a taco, and if they're not vegan, they might choose that taco, the plant-based taco, because there's no other option. And that helps people overcome that fear that we talked about in the beginning, this fear that people are afraid to try new things, because we bring in that familiarity and then we give them that push. Well, there's no other choice. So you can't go with what you're most familiar with. So maybe give it a little bit of a shot. You're familiar with tacos, but maybe you never had tofu. Give it a shot. So I've seen this on menus, and the only thing to remember is that you cannot make a plant-based option compete with the meat-based option and have it be identical on the same menu and expect a mainstream customer to order it. So if you're going to make, let's say, a Caesar salad and a vegan Caesar salad, that's great to have a vegan Caesar salad option for the vegan guest. The mainstream guest probably isn't going to order it. And so what you just want to expect is to have lower sales on that vegan Caesar salad. So just set your expectations appropriately for what you're creating. Now, if the Caesar salad only option is the vegan one, you're going to have higher orders because someone who's craving a Caesar salad is going to order that, potentially, not always, but if they're brave enough to try a new food, they might order that. So these are just things to consider. What on your menu would you be willing to take a risk on and turn it into a vegan dish? And then we're going to get into some upselling strategies in a few moments where you can actually engineer your menu in a way to also gear people toward that dish. All right, I haven't even really looked in the chat, even though I asked you guys to ask questions, but I don't see any questions. I just see lots of great, yeah, interesting, lots of great comments. Okay. So let's get into the actual writing up the menu. How can we use some technical strategies when we're writing our menu to encourage customers to try these plant-based dishes? We have to look first at the name of the dish. We don't want to have the word vegan as the name of our dish. And unfortunately, you see this everywhere. If you look at menus, you will see vegan burger, vegan taco, vegan salad. I've even seen vegan salad. I even saw vegan tofu, vegan everything. Now, what that does is what we talked about in the beginning. It makes people say, well, I'm not vegan, so why would I order that? It doesn't affect me. It doesn't have anything to do with me. And that's a problem if we want these dishes to sell to the mainstream customer. It's also a problem for vegan customers because the word vegan doesn't actually tell us anything about the dish. It tells us what it doesn't have. We know it doesn't have any animal products if you've labeled it correctly, which also sometimes doesn't happen. But what it doesn't tell us is what the flavors are, what the textures are, what to expect from this dish. And we need to know more about the dish and the flavors in order to be enticed to order it. Unless, again, we're the vegan and there's only one vegan option and we have to order it because that's all we have. But if you want to actually entice people to order the dish, we need more information. So what you can do is, instead of vegan burger, you can say black bean burger. And even better, if you have some sort of description of the black bean burger, like what is the preparation method? Is it grilled? So grilled black bean burger, char grilled black bean burger. You maybe have a signature flavor like barbecue char grilled black bean burger. That sounds so much better than just vegan burger, and it gives us more information. If you're using a processed product like a Beyond Burger, then use that to your advantage. That is something that people are familiar with. Most people have seen those words before. So use that. Use the name Beyond Burger because it's going to give people that familiarity, and also manage the customer expectations so they know what they're going to get. So if they get the Beyond Burger on their plate, they're not surprised. Oh, I thought it was going to be a bean burger. It just said vegan burger. I had no idea what was going to be in it. Next, describe the allergens in the description. Now, you can put allergen labels, that can be helpful for people. But what I've found is most helpful for people with allergies is actually naming the allergen that is present in the dish. So for example, if you're putting a nut label on the dish to notify people that there's a nut in the dish, the person with allergies is going to have to ask a bunch of questions about what kind of nut it is, because maybe they are allergic to peanuts, but not another kind of nut. So they need to know what kind of nut, and they also need to know where in the dish that nut is, because maybe they want to request that dish with the nut ingredient removed, but they can't do that if it's just a nut label. So what we can do is be really clear in our description. So for example, maybe we're doing an Alfredo pasta. So we want to say it's a creamy cashew-based sauce with fried chicken. And if we're going to use an animal name to describe a non-animal product, we can use an abbreviation like that or a play on words to give people that familiarity of what it might taste like or look like. And in the parentheses, we can include the base ingredients. So in this case, it's a soy-based patty. If it was a processed food, we can call it Beyond Meat fried chicken, give it more familiarity. But if you're making it from scratch, maybe you want to explain what the base is. So these are the most clear we can be on menus, the better reviews we're going to get, and the more satisfied customers we'll have, because the customers really just want transparency and want to know what they're ordering before they get the food on their plate. You'll have a lot fewer dishes returned to your kitchen. If you are putting labels, just make sure that they're correct. It's a big issue in the industry, having mislabeled menus. And if you even have one mislabeled menu, one label is in the wrong place, then the customer loses trust on the rest of the entire menu. So get a consultant to look over your menu. That is something that we offer as a service. You can go to veganhospitality.com and you can go to the menu support tab, and we can look over your menu. And it just gives you that extra peace of mind that you haven't made a mistake, because printing menus over and over, that is also an unnecessary cost. So save yourself that trouble. Use enticing adjectives. Using enticing adjectives like fresh, local, organic, refreshing, you can come up with all sorts of words. You can Google a list of these words. Describe your ingredients in an enticing way. Don't forget about doing this on the vegan dishes. We want to make sure that all customers are enticed to buy this food because they feel good about it. They're excited about it. And be clear, if you're buying local mushrooms from a local mushroom farmer, that's fantastic. Advertise that, promote that. It not only promotes the dish, it shows that you have a sustainability focus. It shows that you care about the local economy. Now, words like fresh, I mean, we hope all your food is fresh, so it's a little bit silly, but because the way human brains work, we're attracted to that. We want fresh food. We want to be healthy. We don't want to get sick. So we are going to be attracted to words like fresh or refreshing. So don't be afraid to describe the ingredients in the menu description. Finally, choose language to manage expectations. So you can actually describe how the dish is going to look on the plate in your description on your menu. And the more you do that, the more satisfied customers you're going to have. So think about it from your own perspective. If you can actually paint a picture in your mind of what a dish is going to look like when you order it, and it comes out and it looks like that, or even better than you could have expected, you're going to be really excited to eat that food. So when we are writing menus, we can even practice with people we know. Troubleshoot your menu. Don't just type it up and print it. Show it to some customers or show it to some of your colleagues and say, what do you envision when you read this description? And see if the picture in their mind matches what is actually going to be on their plate. Okay, everyone, you're still with me. And just for your reference, I have 3 more slides. My last slide is just my contact information. So actually 2 more slides. And then I'll see if anyone has questions. I do see one question in this chat that we'll get to. So what do we do about menu labels? If we're labeling our menu, the graphics, so if you're using a graphic, like a little circle or a picture of something on your menu as the labels, it has to be big enough for people to see them. We forget about this sometimes, but we can't always look with a magnifying glass at these menus, and not everyone has the same level of eye clarity or eye abilities as everyone else. So please make it clear for people to be able to see the menu labels. Another thing is that the graphics really need to be distinct enough from each other to be easily distinguished. So oftentimes we'll see something like 1 leaf for vegetarian or 2 leaves for vegan, our brains can't go back and forth. This is 1 leaf, 2 leaf. They're too close to each other, way too similar. Same with like shades of colors. We might see dark green for vegetarian, light green for vegan. Not everybody can see those shades of colors in the same way. And it's just confusing unnecessarily. We need these graphics to be different, like really different from each other. So what I always prefer on menus is the use of letters over graphics, because letters are much clearer for people to read, and it's hard to get that messed up. It's hard to get a letter messed up because you're not focusing on the color, you're not focusing on identifying some picture and trying to figure out what that picture means. So use letters. You can use GF for gluten-free, V for vegan, VG for vegetarian, or you can use what you want, but you have to make sure there's a key at the bottom of your menu that explains what the labels mean. And if you want to be really clear for customers, put that key on every page of your menu. If you have a multi-page menu, people don't have to flip back and forth looking around for the menu labels. And if you want to be even more exciting for vegan customers, also provide a separate vegan menu for people that are going to request to only see the vegan options. That way your vegan customer doesn't have to scroll through and look through every other dish just to look for those tiny little labels. So you can do all of this. These are all things that are going to enhance the ability for customers to order your food better, and also to prevent decision fatigue. If they're having to look through so many things and eventually they're like, oh, just give me whatever. They're exhausted by the time they get to the end of your menu, not understanding what they're looking at. So try to make the experience for people as easy and clear and stress-free as possible. And finally, I wanted to include some fun upselling strategies. This is not vegan specific or plant-based specific. These can be used for any dishes. So what I see a lot on menus is, and what stands out in the research is that when we don't use dollar signs, or not just dollars, but any currency, when we remove the currency sign, people spend more money. And that's because we don't want to be reminded of how much money we're spending when we are choosing what to eat. We want to feel free and happy and order our food based on what we like. So don't use any dollar signs or any other signs, but you do have to tell people what currency you are putting the money, the numbers in, especially if you live in a touristic community where people aren't quite sure, are you using the local currency? Are you using dollars? So just put a note at the bottom. This menu is in US dollars. And then just list the number. So if it's $12 for an appetizer, just put 12. So that's a great strategy anybody can use on your next menu update. Another thing that you can do is highlight certain dishes that you want to draw people's eyes toward. So you can put a pretty box around an item you want to sell more dishes. You can maybe highlight it as a chef's choice or a popular item. And this, you have to first know what are the dishes you want people to order. So don't choose this at random. Look at the dishes that might have a higher profit margin for your kitchen, or dishes that are easier for you to put together, or whatever the reason is. Make sure you have a reason of why you're highlighting certain dishes. Something else you can do is you can tell a story with some dishes. So if you want to call people's attention to a dish, or especially a plant-based dish that you're not really sure if they're going to be interested in, give it some sort of story behind it, or familiar traditional vibe. So we can call it grandma's famous lasagna. Maybe your grandma's famous lasagna was a lentil lasagna, was a plant-based zucchini lasagna, but they're going to hear the word grandma and they're going to think traditional, and they're going to feel closeness. So thinking about how can we tell a story with some of these dishes that is going to entice people to want to place that order. And we, like I just mentioned before, decision fatigue. If we have too many items on our menu, it's confusing for people, they get tired. So keep each section to 7 dishes or less. And if you have a very long menu, all you have to do is put section titles, so subsections within your long menu. All right, let me tell you how to contact me, and then we can take a look at any questions. So like I said, veganhospitality.com is the website. You can also find us on Instagram at vegan.hospitality. You can subscribe to our LinkedIn newsletter, which we just send out once a month. So we're not going to spam your inbox, but what we do is we send out mostly our blogs, because we have a very informative blog that you can find just by going to our website as well. But who's going to take the time to go every month and click on our blog? Probably nobody. So we send it out to people that want to stay up to date, and you can go there and check it out. You can check out our blog, but you can also subscribe on LinkedIn if you just go to the Vegan Hospitality page. We have over 4,000 followers and a lot of engagement, so it's a really fun place to be. And if you are interested in any kind of support, like you want some menu support, or you have a hotel that could benefit from getting certified and welcoming more vegan guests, please reach out. Everything's clear on the website, but of course you can reach out to me. My email address is there, meredith@veganhospitality.com. You can also message me on LinkedIn. But most of all, I just want to encourage you to have fun when you're doing this, and also really create dishes that you would order yourself. So I've worked with chefs that tell me, well, I'm not going to eat this, so I don't really care what it tastes like, or maybe the vegans will like it, but I won't like it. That's not a great attitude. If you like the dish, you're going to be proud to sell it. Your servers are going to be excited about it. Make sure that you feel like you can stand behind these dishes that you're creating, and make it part of your theme, part of your restaurant concept, so that you feel excited to talk about it on social media and chat about it with your customers, and that you are actually enjoying the process of creating these dishes as well. All right, thank you, everyone. I'm going to take a look at the questions. Let's see. Well, I'll go backwards. Okay, so let's start with the most recent one. What's one piece of advice you'd give to a restaurant or hotel that's just starting to add plant-based options to their menu? Okay. Oh, one piece of advice. Well, I just gave you so many pieces of advice, but let me think of one. One more. All right. Well, I would say don't focus only on the menu. So we've just given a lot of strategies for the menu, but I don't want you to forget about the other components that are going to make this successful. So think about training your front of house staff as well, because they are going to be the ambassadors for this food. They need to taste the food. So let your servers try these dishes so that they can sell them, and explain to them what are the ingredients being used and what does it all mean. Like if I ask a server, oh, tempeh, what is tempeh? They should be able to explain what that means and why I might want to try it. So let your servers taste the food, and make sure you train them to understand what we just went over. What is plant-based? What is vegan? Why would someone order this way? What are the benefits and opportunities, and how to support customers in overcoming this barrier of fear of trying new things? Okay, another question. What new trends do you see emerging in plant-based dining over the next few years? Oh, what a good question, because we just held a conference on this exact topic on November 1st, and you can find it by going to YouTube. You can go to the Vegan Hospitality channel on YouTube, and you can go to the Global Vegan Hospitality and Tourism Conference, and it was our third conference, so it's the most recent one. It's 2 hours, so yeah, you have to watch I think 2.5 hours, but maybe I can give you a little clue right now what trends. So we see sustainability as a major trend. So moving towards sustainable menus, wellness focused menus, fungi, lots of mushrooms, lots of local mushrooms happening in menus, and really looking at how can we use technology to create these interesting products that are going to be enticing, not just for vegans, but for everyone to try, because ultimately we do have to start replacing some of these animal products with plant-based and planet-friendly products, just to sustain life on this planet. I mean, it's fairly simple that we have to make this transition. So we need to make sure that we're creating products people are going to enjoy, and that's all people, not just people who are fully vegan at this point. All right, are there any other questions? What inspired you to create Vegan Hospitality? I believe it's such an interesting and innovative concept. Oh, thank you. Well, that is also quite a long story. And if you Google my name or go on my LinkedIn, you'll see there are a lot of podcasts that I've been on where I talk about this. But the quick answer is that I started out in hospitality as a customer who could not find what to eat, and I needed to start advocating for myself, which resulted in building relationships with chefs and restaurants, which resulted in becoming a thought leader in this topic, and then consulting for restaurants and hotels myself in order to get a good meal, and realizing I wasn't the only one that would benefit and the only one that wanted to eat this way. And then I started training other people around the world to do this work too. And now we've got a really large team of people who are focused on this mission. Okay. Another question. How should the menu be organized to strategically position plant-based dishes for maximum appeal and profitability within a vegan hospitality setting? Okay, well, I'm not sure what you mean by vegan hospitality setting. So I'm not sure if you mean, maybe you mean like in a vegan-friendly situation, because if we were fully vegan, then everything would be plant-based. But let's just say that we're looking at a mainstream restaurant. And we want to strategically position them on the menu. I think that's what you're asking. Okay, well, when we look at menu positioning, we're going to look at the golden triangle. So if you have like a rectangular page, we want to go like that. And we want to look at the menu items that are on the top right, top left, and kind of center where we're placing our focus. And so any dishes that you really want to sell well, you want to put in that golden triangle. So that's one strategy that you can utilize. You can also use the strategies of putting boxes around things. You can also make your plant-based items your best seller, your daily special. So you can have the servers introduce a plant-based dish as a daily special. So that's something that creates a little bit of urgency and immediacy. Like, oh, if you don't try it, well, it won't be here tomorrow. So give it a try today. You can veganize all your soups of the day. So anyone who's ordering a soup of the day is going to have a vegan version, a vegan soup. But yeah, on menu, you want to think also about the first item in every section and the last item in every section. Those are going to be the most memorable. Another strategy would be to position the plant-based dish around a higher cost item so that it looks comparably less expensive, so that it appears to be the more affordable option, but don't make it too cheap that people think it's not valuable. So these are some strategies that you can use. There's a lot. Let's see what else. Okay, seeing thank yous. Any other questions? I think maybe we have time for one more. I'm gonna scroll through and see if I missed any. Okay, I do see one. What challenges do you face when helping businesses meet their plant-forward sustainability goals, and how do you address them? Oh, wow. Plant-forward sustainability goals. I think that every problem is solvable. So I think the biggest challenge I face is just the mentality that everything is so hard. So there's this mentality that, oh, we can't take beef off of our menu. People are going to hate us and never come stay at our hotel again. And I don't think that's true. I really don't. I think actually the opposite will happen. You'll be seen as a leader in sustainability. You'll be seen as a company that actually lives by your values, that acts on your values. If you say you're a sustainable restaurant or hotel and you have beef on your menu, it's very hard to trust you. So I do believe that the opposite is true sometimes, that we are just very afraid, and these fears stop us from taking action toward what is actually right and what is actually better for the planet, and maybe even better for our own business. But we stop ourselves because we're afraid to take a risk, or we're listening to the wrong people. So if you do have a chance to be in the ear of someone who has these fears, then I encourage you to just be really positive about it. And let's look at these problems as solvable. And let's say if you want to have your sustainability goals met, then we have to be willing to be a leader and take a risk, and not just focus so much on what the consumer demand appears to be, but actually lead the demand and lead the trends and create the demand for what we are offering by creating something really desirable within our own hotel or restaurant. All right, I think that's everything. Thank you all so much for your time here today. I really enjoyed chatting with you today.
Thank you so much, Meredith. I actually also have a question of my own. As
Great.
you mentioned, that one of the trends that is also rising right now is sustainability, and a lot of restaurants are including QR codes instead of menus, instead of paper menus. But for example, for luxury restaurants, what could be an alternative, since a QR code could not be viewed so pretty or so luxurious?
So I think you're talking about just an alternative to printing on trees. Like, okay, yeah, so not printing on trees, but using trees to create paper and then printing on them, which is not great if we want to be sustainable. We don't want to cut down the forests to print our menus. So one thing you could do if you're at a luxury resort is just look at the source of what you're printing on. So you can print on sustainable materials. You can print on cottonseed paper, which is they're using like the outside of the cottonseed. You can print on recycled paper. You can take a look at other ways you can print that are not going to be, resource heavy. I love the use of QR codes. I think that's actually really useful because they can be updated so easily and frequently, and it allows you to better serve people with allergies, because you can also include tabs. Like you can include a tab for just filtering for the vegan options or just for the gluten-free options, for example. So I think QR codes are fantastic, but I agree, in a luxury environment, maybe you don't want people pulling out their phones and having those as barriers to their communication. So I think just taking a look at printing on more resource, less resource heavy paper, and maybe getting creative, maybe having, I don't know, some sort of other material you're using, or having it printed in a larger scale where people can visually see it. Or sometimes you have fine dining restaurants where the server is simply reading or sharing with you what is on the menu, or a chef's table where there's no menu really at all and they're just serving you delicious food in multi-courses. So I think there's a lot, and we just have to get creative about it.
Okay, thank you so much. And I saw a lot of people saying very nice things, and Alit here, who was sharing that he's an executive chef and he's right now exploring how to integrate veganized foods into the restaurant in Bali. Ingrid also, who participated a lot. Thank you so much. There are a lot of beautiful comments here. Thank you, Meredith, so much. It was a very inspiring guest lecture. And everyone, don't forget to follow Meredith online on Instagram and subscribe to the LinkedIn. Also, if you would like to see the guest lecture again and see the slides, it's going to be posted on our YouTube. The link to our YouTube is posted in the comments, in the chat. And if no one has any more questions, thank you so much. Thank you, Meredith, again. This was very nice of you. Thank you.